It was supposed to be a romantic getaway for Mark and Sarah, a chance to escape the hustle and bustle of city life and spend some quality time together. They had rented a cozy cabin by the lake, surrounded by lush greenery and pristine waters. Mark, an avid fisherman, had promised to teach Sarah how to fish, and she had eagerly agreed, wanting to learn more about his favorite hobby. On the first morning of their trip, Mark woke up early and headed down to the lake, fishing gear in hand. Sarah, still groggy from sleep, decided to join him, curious about what he was so passionate about. As they walked along the water's edge, Mark pointed out the different types of fish and explained how to cast a line. Sarah watched in amazement as he effortlessly flicked his wrist and sent the bait flying into the water. She fumbled with her own rod, struggling to get the hang of it, but Mark was patient, offering tips and encouragement along the way. As the day wore on, Sarah began to feel more comfortable with the fishing gear and even caught a few fish of her own. She was surprised by the rush of excitement she felt each time she reeled in a catch, and Mark was proud of her progress. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, cooking up their fresh catches and talking about anything and everything. Sarah felt a sense of closeness with Mark that she had never experienced before, and she knew that this trip was more than just a romantic getaway, it was a chance to deepen their connection. On their last day at the lake, they decided to take a boat out onto the water, wanting to explore more of the lake before their trip came to an end. As they paddled along, they noticed something strange. The water was murky and discolored, with dead fish floating on the surface. Mark's face turned serious as he realized what had happened. The lake had been contaminated with chemicals, likely from a nearby factory. He explained to Sarah how pollution and overfishing can harm the delicate balance of an ecosystem, and how important it is to protect the environment for future generations. Sarah listened intently, moved by Mark's passion and knowledge. As they headed back to shore, she knew that this fishing trip had been more than just a chance to learn a new skill. It had been a lesson in love, respect, and responsibility. Short story in English. As Mark and Sarah packed up their belongings and prepared to leave the cabin, they made a promise to each other to do what they could to protect the lake and its inhabitants. They vowed to spread awareness about the issue and take action to ensure that the local authorities took the necessary steps to clean up the contaminated water. Back in the city, they reached out to local environmental groups and started a social media campaign to raise awareness about the pollution of the lake. They were amazed by the support they received and the number of people who were willing to join their cause. Eventually, their efforts paid off. The local authorities took notice of their campaign and launched an investigation into the source of the contamination. The factory responsible was fined heavily and required to take steps to prevent further pollution, and the lake slowly began to recover. Mark and Sarah returned to the lake a few months later, eager to see the progress that had been made. To their delight, they found the water clear and sparkling, and fish jumping joyfully in the sunlight. As they sat by the water's edge, watching the fish swim by, Sarah turned to Mark and smiled. "You know," she said, "I never would have thought that a fishing trip could change my life like this." Mark smiled back at her, feeling grateful for the chance to share his passion with the woman he loved. "That's the thing about fishing," he said. "It's not just about catching fish, it's about connecting with nature, learning from it, and doing our part to protect it." As the sun began to set on the final day of their fishing trip, Mark and Sarah packed up their gear and prepared to head back to the cabin. They had enjoyed a wonderful few days together, fishing, exploring the lake, and just being in each other's company. As they walked along the water's edge, hand in hand, a sudden gust of wind caused Sarah to stumble and fall into the water. Mark quickly dove in after her, trying to reach her before she was pulled under by the strong current. For a few agonizing moments, he struggled against the water, desperate to save the woman he loved. But the current was too strong, and he soon found himself struggling to stay afloat. As he looked up at the sky, he saw the last rays of sunlight fading away and realized that this was it. He had always known that the lake was dangerous, but he never thought it would claim the life of someone he loved. With a heavy heart, Mark let himself sink beneath the surface, hoping that at least one of them could be saved. But it was too late. When the rescue team arrived, they found both bodies floating in the water. The news of their tragic accident sent shockwaves through their families and friends. Mark and Sarah had been so young, so full of life and promise, and their untimely deaths left a hole in the hearts of everyone who knew them. In the days and weeks that followed, their loved ones tried to come to terms with their loss, but it was a struggle. The memory of their fishing trip, once a source of joy and happiness, now haunted them, a painful reminder of what they had lost. As for the lake, it remained as beautiful and serene as ever, a cruel reminder that sometimes, even the most idyllic places can hide dangers beneath their surface.